All right, we are live. We are the second of 3 Woo Woo Wednesday streams today, joined by the amazing Nathan, Old Man Builds, and a little late starting off because first I had to watch your podcast channel upload on the UFOs that you just did, the breakdown, and some very crucial understanding and explanations that you gave in it. And maybe do you want to start off a bit with that, or should I bring up the video a little bit, or do you just, how do you want to go about?
We'll just start off with a couple main points that all UFOs do and things you got to realize. One of the biggest misunderstandings is that you have to calculate the amount of energy needed on your UFO based on the amount of energy of Earth, like you're going to repel it. And it's just not the truth. What you're actually doing is you're creating a field around it. So you're going to have that in that locality, you're going to have the amount of energy necessary in there. You see, that's a big misconception that goes on there. One of the second misconception is, how exactly are you going to break gravity? And with a lot of these things, we have to look at nature to tell us the answer. If I told you that in reality, the best way to do it is to resonate something, you probably wouldn't understand that. There's a concept there. If we have too many people walking on the bridge and we get those people to create the resonance value in that bridge, right? The bridge starts swaying out of control. It's like
oscillation, right? So this is the oscillation and what Tesla understood, and it's how tuning forks work and how Tesla coils in resonance work, and it's how you break down and create these standing waves that hold together molecules, right, and of atoms. And it's between the states, the phase states, right, whether it's a stable solid, a stable liquid, or a stable gas, or a stable ionized plasma, right? And that it's all of these densities and then these energy levels that they're oscillating at in those phase states. And that when you break it all down, you're getting to that Planck level that things are oscillating at, and then they're coming out as the different frequencies of light, sound, and the different waves, right? And then it's here is crucial part that I'll bring up that
go for it.
Started out with what I entered in the clip that I made on Michael Faraday's League of Extraordinary Inventors last week, where I misunderstanding the double slit experiment, and that particles, so we saw a particle that we view as solid, in fact, is not in the third solid state that we think and envision it as, and envision particles. That's completely misconception. In fact, it is the substructure, thus like the subplank or the subparticle that they're always trying to find at CERN, and it's actually fields. Okay, so it's that a particle is a field of coherent standing waves. So what does that mean? Of the double slit experiment, it's both particles that are making it through as that full coherent field still, or it's getting scattered and breaking up into the different waves and radiations and different effects that travel as waves. Thus, it is both the light, both a wave and a particle, and that a particle is a field, and that field, how this is so crucial in understanding. Oh, I know the picture I need to bring up now in relation to this. But before I switch screens here, I'll come back to this and read it. But I did a deep search into Grok with the 25-second clip, and the amount of information it came out with was very impressive, and that it's pretty much supported. Well, not pretty much. It 100% could not debunk or find anything wrong with what I proposed and said. And in fact, it stated that it was more accurately relevant in understanding quantum mechanics and aspects of the double slit experiment. Hey, Gerald, shout out to you, brother. And that I emailed you if you want to join, because huge parts of what we are discussing is exactly what you're working on and have brought forward and doing. But if you're available, feel free to hop on. Okay, so back to what I'm explaining with the wave duality and how it's a particle is actually the field of coherent standing waves. And that geometry, how they're oscillating in the specific densities, is relevant to, and my apologies for a moment as I look for the relevant photo, but it's of the what they call the electron probability, right? And where is an electron or this charge going to be located on the valence shells of this particle, right? So it's also a misconception of thinking of these solid particles. It's correct that they are in fact a full sphere, right? Because they're fields, right, of charge, but they exist within themselves. And then how they're structured in their valences of whether it is a ionized plasma, the highest energetic, stable, or whether it is a solid where it's crystallized metal or solid physical element, or if it's in a liquid, right? And what ionic bonds level they're at and able to interact and give their energies and transfer heat as well as electric, right? And this is the electrochemical material science aspect that has been missing, that I've been able to uncover with experimenting with electrolysis and connecting alchemy and what the ancient alchemists really did understand, and that it is this cold fusion, and that Tesla fully understood this by the end because he was best friends with Walter Russell, and Walter Russell is truly the one that cracked the code with all of his charts and diagrams and understanding the geometry of nature and the system. And as I try to load, momentary buffering. So, Nathan, what are your thoughts on what I'm saying here?
Well, let's just start off with the laser in the experiment. It's a focused field, right? That's basically what we're looking at. And in any laser, you have a gas, you have a magnetism, you have a voltage, and you have a plasma that are going on at any one given time. And you could do it with high voltage on a table. You could just put down 2 bars, put high voltage to it, and create a laser going in one direction. You can also use the Casimir effect with aluminum to create a laser. So in understanding that, what are you doing? You're exciting the gas based on this process, right? And each gas that you excite comes out a different color laser. So we just have a laser beam that's controlled by those factors. Now, when your body is next to a weak one, you can influence where that laser goes.
Sorry to interrupt, Nathan, but what you just explained, I understood. I am going to make me a gold laser with my monoatomic gold.
There you go. Nice. So if you understand the parts of it and how it's built, then you can understand how to influence it, right? So if my body has capacitance, I'm going to move that light. You know what I mean? And if it's a very strong laser where it's cutting, I won't be able to do anything to it. But in that experiment, they're not cutting cardboard, they're not cutting anything. It's a very weak light. So your body capacitance is going to really affect what's going on there. Now you can maneuver a little bit. So as you're standing there, you're adding capacitance into a field. When you move out of that area, you remove that capacitance. What does that mean? It means you change the direction of the light. It no longer has you sitting in there with your aurora going off in the background. You know what I mean? Putting it in the right place. What it's doing when you walk away is it gets rid of that and it goes straight where it's supposed to go. You're putting the laser off when you first set it. Now, you say, okay, well, what if I move myself and put a camera in there? Every camera has a magnetic field to it. And every time you do that, you're influencing one of the things that are in light. So now you're influencing it again. You've changed from your body to a camera, two different fields, but you still influence it because it's a weak light. If you sit there and you take that laser and you crank up the amount of energy going through it, you're not moving it. It's going to stay going right to the same hole. But then it's not going to split the way you want because it's not a weak laser. You see, it'll keep shooting through and cut everything apart. So the more you weaken it in order to get your experiment to split, the weaker it is in how it's held together. So you influence it by doing it. That's why. It's how they set up the experiment. There's not setting it up for success at all. It's setting it up for failure. So
Fully agree with that.
Yeah, that's my opinion on that one. Yeah, we were talking about some of the UFO stuff. So let me get back to the bridge real quick. If we resonate something, you got to understand there may be more than one resonance going on. I mean, think about it. If I say horses on a bridge, right? There's four hooves there, right? But then there's also a fifth element that goes on there because I never think of it in my head as da-da-da, da-da-da. I always think of it da-da-da-da-da, right? With five. Always with five, not with four. There's a reason for that. If you go back to the Viamana, they teach you a lesson. Two tubes the same size, two tubes the same size, yet all four are not equal. What happens when you get resonance in two tubes? Well, they'll resonate with each other. That's fine. The other tubes resonate with each other. But what happens between all four is a beat frequency. That's that fifth sound that you hear. And what's going on is there's a beat frequency going on. So we're running UFOs. We got to carry a combination law. I need two frequencies that are in resonance with each other, 2 and 2. There's 4 there now. Now I can create this thing and have a beat frequency between them. Now I have what I want. You'll always have people explain to you if they have like some kind of encounter with a UFO. There's a high frequency, but there's a very low frequency. The low frequency is your beat frequency. The high frequency, they can't distinguish one from the next on which one's resonating between the other. Now you can understand it. It basically builds out of the combination law to build things, you know what I mean, that you need for your UFO, but it distorts nature. That's why it's important. Gravity loses hold on it by distorting nature.
Absolutely. And to its locality. So
That's
what
right.
what I have up here, and you're at 100% bang on with the 4, and that those are the standing waves, and that you need them oscillating in coherence, and that what you're going to get from that, you see, are these stable fields, and these are the actual electron valence shells of the hydrogen atom, and then they begin to split and scatter as you split and scatter the probability of where you're going to find the wave function. Why is this? It's because they're fields, and that white light is the full, purest form of your plasma, your ionized element coming out of light. And then you have the split that is the red, your infrared, going into your heat, and then your blue, your ultraviolet, going into the smaller cold. And that the red is your electric charge, first valence, and then your blue is your cold magnetic negative, or sorry, positive. No, it's magnetic pole. It's your polarization, sorry, of these fields. And I know what I'm saying kind of sounds like a whole bunch of rumbled, jumbled together nonsense, but there's a lot of aspects to it. And it's going back to what I was saying of misinterpretation of the double slit experiment, and that a particle is made up of a field that is the round circle full volume, right? The center point being that vector of the electron, or your electric field, and your magnetic field, and your gravitational, right? So just that field of it. And you can see it clearly in these hydrogen wave function probability mapping, and understanding the densities of light and color and that wave that they're breaking down and operating on, and the charge, and that white is neutral, red is hot, blue is cold, blue is destructive, and well, it's the negative charge, yes. But then it is the anode. It's the anode, but the anode we say is positive, but it is destructive though, right? So really it should be the negative, the ground, I think, right? And so
Well, I
what
don't
I'm
see them the same way that you do in destructive and constructive and the positive and negative. I see them as different fields. Like usually the positive is your voltage and the negative is your magnetic when you get to certain things and the way they build them.
Yes, you're bang on with that. That's 100% correct. And it's how the two forces are interacting between these valence shells of those standing oscillating waves, and the wave functions between them. So that one is your electric wave, the next is your magnetic, the third is the effect off of that is the gravitational.
Which should
And
bring in your light and plasma.
yes, and that's the fourth. The fourth
Yeah.
is the plasma, the ionic state, right? And where you produce and interact on the full field scale of white light, right? And then when you break down, you get the colors of light, and they're just fractals of photons. They're waves. They're not that full field. And so you have to have it on the full outer fourth valent plasma shell to interact with photons, full electrons, and the rest of them, in muons, gluons, and all of that I'm not going to go too far into because I don't want to misrepresent it. But
well, check this out, Burnye. So every time that you create something like this, you're going to create light, right? So when you create light, you're ultimately running a waveform through gas, is what you're doing. So you think of it when you go plasma, right? You can see visible plasma as purple. And you go, well, why can't
plasma is actually all colors, and it's when it's white plasma is that's the center, and it comes out of the hydrogen, right? But then you can scatter it into the different densities, and when it's a hot combustible, right, it's or exothermic reaction, you get the red plasma of a flame, and then when it's blue, it's the cold, and it's the endothermic reaction of the field and the chemical breakdown and construction of the bonds. And so that the noble gases are like the smallest, but the monoatomic metal elements are them in the higher fractals, and that's why they break down into those same respective gases and so forth, as we see so elegantly put in the octave scale of Walter Russell, and that in each octave you have the different colors, and that there's the red and the blue sides of it, the hot and cold, the magnetic, the electric, and that when I'm saying that, it's what field you have it in and where. So I
Okay,
guess I
real
got.
quick, what I was trying to get at, Burnye, is that you're producing a gas when you're creating this light. Okay, and that's what's giving you your color. Regardless if you think you are or not, it would be just like doing plasma and you're doing ionic wind. You're producing a light with that. In that, you're producing a gas. So as you're in the room, you're taking in the gas and you can smell it. Okay, but it also produces light. So if I deal in high voltage, I can create any light color I want, but I have to know that they're creating a gas with each one of them that's produced in there. It has to do with your molecule chain. We're creating a
Yes,
chain.
you're absolutely correct, and it's that it's the back and forth between the gaseous state, stable valence shell that's at the base, first one, and then having it fully ionized, right? Because it's ionized gas that is plasma, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where the light is, and it's producing, and that it has that heat um, component to it, and that it can't break down so anymore, or if it's off of a flame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Composed to, you have to have very high energy interactions to have that stable ion state when charged, or extreme cold, or extreme hot, or the rotations between and the mixing vortexes, and that's how the craft and the field generations and interactions work.
But the cold itself produces a different color light than the hot.
Exactly,
And
that's what I'm saying.
yeah, so like when I do plasma and stuff with voltages, if I have it in a hot state, I'll get like a purple. If I have it in a cold state, I'll get blue. And it just comes out that way in the voltage. High voltage doesn't lie to you. It tells you everything you need to see. Then you need to break it down to low voltage and see what's going on.
And like that, you exactly like that's experimental replication of what I'm saying here with the hot being, and it's purple because the gas element wave function of that range that I'm guessing is in your tube is then mixing the hot red with the blue natural of, like, what gas do you have, are you running with?
Well,
Or
see,
is it
that's
just
what I'm
atmosphere?
saying.
It's
In
atmosphere.
high voltage, the gas is produced. It's already out in the atmosphere. It's everywhere. You're just
Yeah, so it's atmospheric gas that you have the plasma going through, right? It's not like a sealed vacuum
no, no,
tube
no.
of
Yeah, no,
specific
no
gas.
vacuum, nothing.
Okay.
Nature produces this stuff naturally, and we can produce the gas naturally through this process. So, yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knows it's always present. Not a lot of people understand that. In order to have light, you have to have gas. It's like a scalar field meeting the Earth. As soon as it does, it has to go through grass and produce light. So, and the
Yes.
amount of gas and the density of the gas gives you your wavelength. And then in that wavelength, you get different light colors. And then, depending on whether it's heating it up or it's cooling it down because of the coherence in it, you get a different color. So when we talk about the energy in space, they always like to talk about dark energy, but they have no idea it's a scalar field. And as soon as you realize it is, As soon as you bust out a scalar field and put it into any kind of gas at any level, it starts to produce light and change what's going on inside there. So when you take bulbs that are gas, or you take a little circle that's gas, you can make plasma go in a donut. You could do other things like that. You could produce different light in there. If you change the speed of your camera, you can see every single gaseous state in one field, even if it's just a fluorescent. I had that shown to me on my channel, which is totally mind blowing, because you would take this wire that goes down the center in a scalar field, you wrap it around this fluorescent light, but you get every single color of the rainbow in it. Mind blowing.
That's right. And that when you have the white light, that's what's able to then be refracted into the full rainbow of all colors. And each color is at a different frequency, and it's got both an electric and magnetic component to it. But it's resonant frequency of the atom. And then so all standing waves of fields and breaking down and recomposing of them.
Yeah, but you just said the resonant state of the atom, so not a lot of people understand that concept. When you're doing the bridge and stuff like that, you're taking it out of the whole Earth and how the fields work. Number one, when you're doing that, you're taking the atom of, say, steel, and you're resonating that atom of steel. You know what I mean? And now you're going back and forth with it, back and forth with it. It can't stay in a lock. It's like putting your hand on a board, right? As soon as you put your other hand over it, you can't move it, right? So you know you're putting pressure on it. As soon as I start to vibrate something at a super fast speed like this, right? My hand here no longer can control it as well as it needs to, right? So now it is completely out of the state of nature. So now it could go anywhere it wants. The pressure is no longer put upon it. So what does that tell you? It tells you as the bridge was sitting there, we removed the pressure with resonance. Therefore, it no longer is able to stay in that same gravity, which means at some fundamental level, gravity itself is a pressure field.
Absolutely. And it's 3 pressure fields. It is the blue, which is an oxide that forms on these.
And then
they always do, and I've made them of every single metal element. And it is in electrolysis galvanic reaction. It's the sacrificial anode elements break down. And first you get the pure ionic metal dissolved into the liquid, where one of its valence shells breaks down and dissolves into the water with a salt. And then you also have the cathode side, which is the red electric hydrogen. Oops, there we go. This one right here. And I've been able to see, but when it's in this state, there's time is one of the fields as well, right? And the time fields, space time, and understanding decay and how it all goes together. I think maybe I should let you.
So when you say space-time, what exactly are you referring to? I hear the term a lot. I don't really understand it as well as I would time dilation. So can you give me like a breakdown?
Okay, first you should go into time dilation. And because a lot of you guys have been producing a lot of time dilation with your experiments. So I'd like to hear some of yours, if you don't want.
Okay, so we all know that frequency equals 1 over time, right? What does that basically mean? So you have your sine wave, right? The distance between each sine wave is the amount of time it takes to make that, right? So the frequency equals the time it takes to get through it, right? And it's just 1. So whatever the total amount is in the height of the wave is exactly what it is, right? So frequency equals 1 over time. So that's pretty simple, right? But that's not time dilation, okay? Time dilation is breaking energy. It's not time as a linear format like we just did, right? No. Time is not linear the way people think it is. Time is a reflection of energy. And because of that, you can manipulate it in a field. You're going to have to ionize the air. You're going to have to create a static field. You're going to have to create a radiant field. You have to create 2 fields, one that'll hold in like pressure to the other, right? So as soon as you create the outside field, right, then you can create what is like a static field on the inside of it. Now, if you can't create that, time dilation is not possible. But does that mean that you have to create a field in midair? I do it, but other people don't. They use the room as the field. If I have wires in my wall, I can use every one of the ground wires in my wall to produce that field. It's just that easy. If I have a bunch of metal in here, a bunch of cabinets and everything like Hutchinson would have, every single one of them has a value to electricity, and I can use those to contain the field. So you must have a containment. You must create a high static value, and you must sit there and ionize the air. Now you can start to get into a time dilation state. That is the only way to get there. So when we do that, we start looking at UFOs and everything. They're all creating time dilation. That's why they move so fast. Okay, we see it every time when we talk about Einstein and special relativity. Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying that they're moving at an ultra fast pace, but it's only the eyes of the observer that are taking this in, right? So to them, they're moving at the same speed as us, but they've changed the time on us. And because they changed the time on us, now we're moving in an ultra slow to them. That's the whole observer state in that. So time dilation, you can start doing it with magnets now. Take magnets, take the shaft, put your high voltage on the shaft, right? You're going to get a high amperage field. You're going to get high amperage with high voltage, which would create an oscillating state between the two, which would then create a radiant field that would push out, right? But inside that radiant field, your static field cannot come out of it. It stays in there stuck. And then it'll ionize it because you're putting out ion wind. So the ionization is there in the air. You will literally create a time dilation field. So this is what Mike does, right? He creates that in his field. I do it in my little gravity fire based on ionization and the field itself. My system is a field generator, period. That's what it was intended for. What it could be used as is something different, but that's what it's intended for. It'll literally create a time dilation field. Gerald does it in his coils based on the room, putting ground to the room. He can now take that room and create the environment that it needs to build in, right? And it'll take some time to do it. Hutchinson did the same thing. All the cabinets in his room, they became the field on the outside. If he sat in a shipping container, that became his field on the outside. He filled it full of static. He ionized the air with plasma. You see this little ball in there and it's creating plasma inside of it, right? Well, he's ionizing everything. Now, we take that to the thunderstorm generator, right? We literally take a bulb and we put it in the water and we're ionizing the water. Why? So that particles can break themselves apart easier. That's the whole point of ionization. We want to break that molecule chain apart. So what do? They put it in spheres, specific sizes, because it has to be resonating from one sphere to the next sphere in order to create the two. And then
the spheres.
Yeah, the spheres that they have, and they resonate both of them. So they're both in resonance together. And then they break it as soon as they hit that beat frequency. It breaks them apart. And then when you break them apart, now you can remake the molecule chain however you want. but it's all the same process. All of it's present in everything. Anytime you look at any kind of UFO experiment that they did in the past, even the Nazi bell, you look at it, what is it doing? It's creating resonance in it. What did they do in there? A U-shaped magnet, right? But some people don't know that those things can work in one way, creating a single pole, or they can create the dual poles in there. It all depends on how you wire things together. Now, when you get to that, you still have your magnetic value, which is going to lead to your field on the outside. You're going to have your static value, which is the field on the inside. You're going to have ionization. They did it in every single UFO experiment. Creates time dilation. It is required because now when you're in resonance, the speed of the resonance now has a purpose. Okay? It now gives it a general purpose in your time dilation field. That's why. Because resonance doesn't work at our level. We don't see it.
I've got to explain now. Ionization, it creates this white powder called ozone, O3, correct?
That's right.
That's right. And that is the neutral state of the blue monoatomic particle that I'm talking about in this solid state of things, and understanding the breakdown of the interaction of how the electrochemistry of it all happens. And when I'm talking about space-time and decay, it goes back again to and then radiation is you're out of phase if you yourself travel through this time dilation system, and that's why you will age and you yourself will break down with like your skin coming off and everything, and you come out and you're old or whatever. It's because you are out of the as you get into where you stabilize, you're not oscillating in that specific space time that you have now traveled to in relation to the rest of that universe without harmonizing it. And there is the way of getting around it, and I just had this revelation of how all of the Keshe technology actually works with the three fields, the red, the blue, the atomic hydrogen that is always produced through electrolysis, and this monoatomic and light interaction. Anytime I make the atomic hydrogen, it always sparkles with a little bit of light as the bond breaks and it comes out of the water. And then on the anode destructive side, you have the blue oxide compound physical that forms. And then on the cathode, you have the growth of the nano layers of hydrides. That is the second hydrogen of that water reaction that forms on the cathode side of it, and it is the red side, and it's the electric of it. And when I'm using all of these terms, right, and I'm always, when I'm using the terms, it's from the electrochemical breakdown of the solid state of the metal element, the electrical inputs of and outputs of the anode and cathode into the system, and that you have, like you were saying, the gas, because there's always the gas that comes out, and that is that creation of that light particle of atomic hydrogen that comes out. And it's always also off of the cathode side, that more voltage you put in, the more it comes out, more it produces, right? That's how you make hydrogen. And then the different molecular compounds of hydrogen and what they say as HHO and the rest of it. And there's so many different combinations of it, but it's all this electrochemistry, and it all has to do with the gas middle state coming out and the light interaction with that, and the oxygen blue on the sacrificial anode, and the constructive nanolayers of the hydride compounds on the cathode side, and then the breaking into, or it's because it's a breakdown of the solid state energy and valence shells into the liquid state, and that in each of those reactions there's always that third gas that comes out, and that there's the hot reaction of growth, and I guess that's why, oh, well, no, it's the cathode. Sorry, I'm just thinking in my head as I'm trying to also pull up a picture of reference.
Well, you should also tell them about the structured water that's going on inside your experiments.
Yes, and how I do structure it, and so but even more so, this is the picture I'm looking for of, on this one, the triple copper coils that are the anode side, and that it is making the cathode side, making the pure red hydride that you see here, and it's the deposits, and that when you get to a heavier density of the right coherent field state, these red hydrogen molecules all of a sudden turn into gray crystal and black crystal hydrogen molecule isotopes, aka deuterium and tritium compounds of one of whatever element your cathode is, and one of the hydride molecule isotope formation as it gets into the denser coherent states. But
Burnye, real quick, sorry, don't we see this on ships when they're under the water?
Absolutely. That of course, 100%. That reaction's always going on, and that the antenna sail, right? That's your charge up. That gives you the ionization charge of it, and then the breakdown, your sacrificial anode into the ocean. That's why you get the rust on it, and etc. But that in these hydride molecule isotopes, they naturally have a very quick decay rate, especially once you dry them into the solid state, and that when you take it out of the liquid, you'll from a liquid state into the dried powder and crystalline nano compounds, that the key, I don't know if I should be saying this right now, because I'm literally talking about how to stabilize the charge and polarization of the crystallization of the solid molecule isotopes of deuterium and tritium. Okay, so for those that really understand what I am saying, I'm not going to say any more on that, and that I'm willing to say this just because the natural decay rate is almost instantaneous if you don't do the process right. But if you do the process right, it starts with days, then you can get it to weeks, then you can get it to months, and then you can get it to I'm not going to go for too far, but yeah. There's methods, and that the exact same process is relevant, and with the reactions of the phase shift transmutation that I achieved with the lead and tungsten into gold reactions, and that as soon as you dry it out, they begin to decay and phase shift back into an oxidized version of their original elements. And that there are specific ways to affect their coherent wave functions of the charge and polarization of the fields, of how the bonds between the molecules of the valence shells stabilize and form and crystallize into solids and don't decay with radiation. And yeah, it's what are your thoughts on what I'm saying there?
Let's take a little bit of a left turn for you, Burnye. Let's get you kind of off of the secret sauce there a little bit. We saw in the ocean that they had these things in there that created electricity, right?
Yeah.
So we also know that water itself, in different densities, when it has salt in it and when it has less salt in it or no salt in it, it'll create barriers in different levels.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we see the ships decaying in there. So how does the process actually work to get that to peel off to do what you're doing in your lab versus what we see in nature?
Oh no, so the key is using nature for how it works. And thus why we see so many of these plasmas and UFOs emerging out of the ocean is because they get hydrogen isotope molecules, they get subparticle breakdown, and they get electric charge out of it all as well, right? And that when you're in that liquid ionic state of phase oscillation, it's a stabler density than having to exist in the above gaseous state.
Nice. Yeah, we always talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let you take over a little bit more. I'd like you to go back into the UFO explanation with the acoustic resonators explanation you were going into earlier. Should I play a bit of the clip, or do you want to just like go over?
Well, look. So what I'm telling you is the way to break your bond to the earth, right? So if you're breaking your bond to the earth, you're doing it with resonance. And how you create that resonance matters. You can break your bond to the earth. Now, it doesn't mean you have propulsion. It doesn't mean that you have necessarily a stable field, because there's no field around that bridge. There isn't. There's no ionization. There's nothing like that. So you have to create that field bubble. Now, you have to understand the states of energy and what you're in. So I always break it down in 3 states. Okay. You have a voltage state, you have a magnetic state, and you have a radiant state. What does that basically mean? If you have a magnet, right, the field around it that it creates when you rotate it is your radiant state. It's what's pushing it out, right? Then you have your voltage state, which gives you the distance it can pull out with energy still present. The magnetic state stays in the center. Okay. That's the way it breaks down. So you have to see the same thing going on there in order to create the field correctly. All I'm doing is reducing my voltage state and my magnetic state in order to get that third state, that radiant state, to build out. That's how you create the bubble. You have to be in that state right there. Those other two have to be really low, and that other one has to be super high. What does that mean? You're in a radiation state. You are literally creating a radiation field around your craft. Now, depending on how much you put into it and how much pressure you put into it, is how much radiation versus radiant. So radiant's just a little brother of radiation. It's like having the demon core open. You get a radiant state around it no matter what. As soon as you close the core, you create radiation and you kill people. So what state do you want to be in?
So the key here is you want the radiation decay at the forward vector momentum, and you want the opposite at the base vector that you are leaving as you are going through the time and space of it.
So hold on.
You understand what I'm saying there? The
You have to
collapse.
go in. You have to go into the Planck state in order to get this.
Yes, it's because you have your front and back vectors both breaking out of and breaking into that Planck state, closing and opening the energies, right? And that by having them directed completely, that is how you get the singularities of force to transfers through the plasma fields of stable time space.
So yeah, so as Sal Ayers puts it, you go into the Planck state, you compress it, it builds out to the other state, right? Well, that's exactly what you're doing here. The amount of compression you put in it, that's why it's a radiant field. That's why it's radiation. Because the only way to get there is to compress the field. The more you compress it, the stronger that field gets. That's what people aren't understanding. In order to go from the Planck state to the state that goes outside, you must force that compression. So that's the key there. And then once you understand that, then you understand why the density of the field matters now, because static is now too dense to pass. Unless it goes over there and start to mix with it, then it'll change it. But if you can keep it under that level, it cannot mix with it and it'll stay in there and compress inside of there. What does that mean? Well, as you ionize it, get ready to lose some molecules out of here. They will not be able to stay in that field. They'll automatically get the heck out. And it'll look like something was on fire. You'll get what looks like a little bit of smoke coming from it.
That's the decay. So that when I'm talking about like space-time breakdown, the matter begins to decay, and this is phase shifting, and that you're breaking down from a solid liquid to the gas to the plasma to the sub-Planck, and then reconstructing back up all of these fields to get through the full singularity wormhole of space-time. And that's why I'm again stating that the misinterpretation of the double slit experiment is that the particle consists of physically coherent standing waves that are oscillating at each of the valence shell densities. But yes,
so that's what also gives you a mirage effect on the outside of the craft, Burnye, because when you break it, right, it automatically wants to put back together. Well, what is that going on? Well, you're taking hydrogen and oxygen and you're breaking them inside, right? And then they're trying to recoalesce on the outside of that field. So you're getting what looks like a water state that's going on. It creates that mirage looking effect. And that's why you always see it, because they're trying to go back and forth. And then you take the description of the color everybody gives you. Why is it always green or blue or an aquamarine? Why is it always those? Because those are the colors that you get when you start forming those things in water, right? So you're breaking down the molecule chain, you're putting it back together on the outside, but it's not stable. So it keeps going, trying to be stable, and it won't allow it to be stable. So you'll get a mirage look all day long.
Yeah.
So we haven't even got into, by the way, pressure and then temperature differential. You have to get into both of those as well once you start dealing with this. We obviously know there's pressure in there because we're holding in fields, right? So we know we create a pressure density. We create a pressure in the center of it in order to get from our Planck state to our outside state for our field, right? So we know we have pressure, but what happens to the air around it? You see, there's a big temperature differential that's going on because you basically, when you get to that radiation state, you're so close to a scalar state, it's unreal, right? You're right there. So you are literally creating that when you're going on and doing this. It's part of one of the states of energy that you'll get into. Now you can understand it. That temperature differential in scalar is real simple. Take the topographical map. Your high mountains are cold. Your surface of the earth is hot. In between is a different temperature in each layer, right? But also a different frequency in each layer of it as you go. The higher you get up, the higher the frequency. The lower you go down, the more the lower the frequency, right? But then the heat comes up with your frequency. We are basically working in what seems to be a DC field, but it's not. Why? Because the oscillation of the earth itself is crystal. So you can't have pure DC. The closest thing you can have is crystal. So when I put crystal in for an oscillation in my experiments and stuff, and I start putting transistors in, that's when they put it together and figured out, hey, crystal and DC are close together, so we can use each one in each field, right? But the earth itself does not create transistors. It does not create the DC state. That's man-made. What we're looking at is a state close to it that's created by crystal oscillation. So, by the way, that's going to be one of the big things that comes up in a UFO experiment, Burnye, in the future, is the crystal state and how it works and how it pushes resonance and everything like that, because it's pretty much how the earth works. Closer to the state of energy you're in versus the earth, the better off your UFO works. You froze on me, Burnye. Oh man, I hope he comes back. There, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yay! You're 100% right. So, and the crystal is the oscillation, and where light comes in, how you diffract it, how it goes into the quantum and the quantum fields. And quantum is just another word for like the Planck unit, sub-Planck. And it's, I guess, waves and fields, right? And how they resonate, oscillate, and that they are below space-time itself. So it's like the information field, which gives you your quantum connection, I guess.
Well, think about it. What's the best oscillator in the world? So what's the best switching? You basically take a crystal and you tap it, and it taps back. You tap it, it taps back, right? Every time you take, like, say, a hammer to a crystal, you tap it, and then the energy bursts out, right? So it's tap, tap back, tap, tap back. Well, what do you need in a system to oscillate it perfectly? Well, they use crystal for radios so that we can get resonant states that are perfect, right? You put it in your watch, right? You take time with it. So just think about this. Your time that we're looking at is created the oscillation between the crystals. So it's a tap and tap back. It's a perfect oscillation in frequency. But they don't just have one crystal. They have multiple types of crystals, so you're going to get multiple resonances. So that's why there's a beat frequencies in the earth based on the multiple resonance levels of the different crystals that are in the earth, because each one puts out a different state. Now, if you want to go further than that, and you looked at the geometry of things, each crystal has its own geometry in the oxygen layer of the crystal, right? That's what you're tapping. So now, when you want to put the geometry in your coils, now you know why, because you're looking for a specific frequencies out of it. As you tap them and tap back, they're going to oscillate at those frequencies together.
AKA resonate, like the tuning fork and like the Tesla coils. And why does a Tesla coil have to be wrapped in the specific identical wrapping numbers and weight and mass? It's because you have to have the same harmonic resonance of the atomic mass and field that you are creating on, and then you have it in harmonic resonance, and then it rings like a bell. And what is the bell? The bell is a 90-degree geometry of the EM drive, right? It's NASA's EM drive 90-degree over. And then when you look at it, it's like, oh, that's the same diagram they give for the Big Bang timeline thing. Like, what's going on here? There's
Do you know why people fail to make that EM drive work? If you ever look at their oscilloscope when they start creating these experiments, you notice the ring and then it goes haywire and then it goes back to the ring and then it goes haywire. Again, and again, they're failing to see what the problem is. Okay? You do not get that thing to balance and push out the field that you want with all those haywire frequencies. They are a complete screw up for your process. It has to ring and ring and ring and ring. As soon as you create an offbeat, you've ruined your state, because now it's no longer an oscillation to create propulsion. You're now in a destructive field and it's trash. So a lot of people don't understand that when they go to do it, because they don't understand the energy and how a ring works. They'll constantly do it. I've seen a ton of people in physics screw this one up. They'll create in one, then they go to the next one, and boom, they'll get an off frequency, right? They'll have something that goes totally negative or something that goes totally positive, or the rings don't match. In order to get that thing to create that pulse, you got to think of it like this. Every time you create the pulse, you're making a motion. Well, as soon as you create a pulse and you have an off frequency, you've killed the motion. But then every time that you create the pulse and have another one going, you continue the motion all the way through. It's the number one failure in the EM drive, because they don't know how to put it together.
Exactly. You have to have something hitting it to make it ring, instead of having it in a harmonic resonance that your pulse, right? Like, essentially.
Well, it's like a piezo buzzer, right? And you put it to a Tesla coil. Well, you can match that piezo buzzer to that coil. You only can do it in one spot, and it hits perfect. Otherwise, you're losing energy. Once you hit it in that one spot, you can double that amount of energy coming out of that coil immediately. It's a over unity part of a coil that you can get out of it if you learn how to resonate things correctly.
Exactly. Uh-oh. Am I frozen? No, I'm still here. Yay.
Yeah, you're still here.
Uh-oh. Come on. No, now I'm frozen. But I'm not frozen. Just my screen's frozen. Okay. Well, is it going to let me load something? I don't know.
Oh, come on. What do you got? Hopefully it's some of those UFO patents you were looking at. Those are cool.
Yeah, I want to bring that up if it's going to let me. Come on, man. Come on, computer. Yeah, let's do this guy right here, because this is an interesting one. If you can hear me, I'm trying to bring up this Chinese patent that is electric. Man, why does it do this? Why does it make it so hard? Why do you buffer, computer? Come on. Almost there. Takes like 30 seconds to like go between every button I have to click to load something before it like freezes and unfreezes. And
you should have let me know, dude. I would have told you how to build your computer so it doesn't do all that garbage. You know what I mean?
I need to do a new one. Yes, we need to figure this out. I need a new computer again. Come on. Oh God, this is so frustrating. I have one that I want to show so bad, because it's
I put 64 gigs of RAM in this thing, man, and then dropped a 3080 in it, and it just cruises all day. I don't have load time waits. That, and you got, I don't know if you're on standard hard drive, but man, go to a solid state drive. It instantly pulls things up and generates pictures quick.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the solid state. At least one of them is, but they're both, for F's sakes, don't crash.
And then you take your conventional hard drive and you put it in as your secondary drive. That way you can put everything on there and just keep your main programs on the primary, so that it speeds things up. Man, it's taking forever to get that picture.
Man, browser can't access your screen. What the god? I don't even think I've ever had that error before. Like, what?
Wow.
Sakes. And again, what the hell? I don't know. Don't know what to do. Why is it every time I click on something, everything freezes? So annoying. And then when it finally loads, it's now giving me an error.
That's always fun, man. They're getting you, Burnye. Getting you.
There you go.
They won't let you put the pieces together.
Won't let us connect the dots of the UFOs. One last time, and maybe I have to restart. Let's see. Come on. Share screen. Load this image that's been up forever. Why is it blinking? For sakes. Not responding. Come on. Come on, Google.
So while we're waiting, Burnye, I was just going to share something out there.
Absolutely. By all means, take over, because this is not cooperating whatsoever.
So we usually look at Tesla patents when we look at the Tesla coil, right? But did you know it's not really a Tesla coil? It's an Odin coil, Oudin coil. And basically, yeah, so it's the way it's configured and the way it looks.
Oh, do you want to share?
Give me a second. Let me, I can pull it up. It's a fascinating thing in the way that they look at this. And I'll there we go. You see it? There we go. So what we're normally looking at is on the right is the Odin coil, and then on the left is a bipolar coil. But that bipolar coil has been that way since Faraday. So Faraday was using it, you know what I mean, a long time ago, but they put a rod in the center of it, and it was basically to put a core in it. On the right is what we conventionally know as a Tesla coil, but it's not. It's an Odin coil, which means that the Tesla patents based on the Tesla coil are wrong. There are none. You go to look it up, and that's why you can't find it. That's why you never see that configuration in anything like that. It's outrageous. So when you go to look up the configuration of it, you can see exactly why it's different and what's going on there. Anyway, this right here, this is one of the things that basically tells you how to make radiation out of this Odin coil. You can literally take it And because all you're doing is taking the energy from it, putting it in a compressed state inside of a bulb, it will literally make radiation, which, you know what I mean? They just have an angle on it so they can direct it so you can make x-rays out of it. So they've known it for a long time that this coil, when you put something down the center of it, which you can clearly see the rod in it, that they were creating a field in there that is radiation in nature, that all you had to do is compress it further to get the radiation out of it. It's right there, right in black and white in front of us. And we never seen it before because we have a misunderstanding of what this coil actually is. It's an Odin coil. That's a coil. And because of that, we ruin all of our experiences in learning how this stuff works. You still there, Burnye? Yeah, now they froze him.
It's the power of Odin. Can you hear the power of Odin?
Dude, it sounds better that way, doesn't it?
Oh, no. Oh, come on. No. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm not glitched out. All right, yes. I fully agree. And that there's, right, Tesla has been mislabeled covering the Odin. And if let me freaking load this, it'll show exactly your Odin coil times like 12, but then times 4 fields, 4 Odin coils within themselves. That's the system of this Chinese patent that it doesn't want me to present.
Is it the number 2 stacked one inside the other?
Yeah, there's that, and a bunch more. You will see, hopefully, if it ever lets me and doesn't crash. What the? It's actually not, because I use this exact same computer with like exponentially more tabs open, like talking about other topics, and it runs really fine.
Wow.
And then it's like, stupid thing.
Man, now you're frozen big time too. Wow. Anyway, I just thought I wanted to throw that information about that on the coil out there so people understand that basically we're misunderstanding patents and stuff like that because they're not put in the right place. That's why I could never find a patent for the Tesla coil as we know it. They don't exist because he didn't build it. So now that we know who built it, now we can get the right information. And once you look into the circuits and what he's working with, then it makes a heck of a lot more sense in the readings we're getting out of this thing. Tesla created, you know what I mean, bifilar coils. They're capacitors. And it'll show in one of these.
Both of my computers, the internet just dropped to 0, so I'm going to try to restart it, and that's how I know it's not.
No, they're really after you. Nobody start, Burnye. I'll hang out here. Wow. All right, he's restarting that thing, man. Wow, that sucks. Anyway, guys, so yeah, what we're talking about is the UFO stuff and how to look at everything. There's just fundamental parts that you have to have. If you have a static field, if you have a radiation/radiant field, if you have ionization going on, not ion wind, but ionization, now we can start to get somewhere. You're going to have to create field compression inside that local bubble that you're creating around your craft. We can do that. I already create the field bubble on mine already. So it's already done. That part's easy. Now we got to get into the temperature differential. How do you move things inside your craft? You have to be able to create a value in magnetics in order to move the energy from one side to the other to get a vector direction. So you could do that with your coils on the outside, putting them around the perimeter like an OTC X1 does. And each one that you turn on will give you a vector direction, right? You could do it with a piezo disc that actually goes like this and sits up there. It's transmitting all the time. You turn it off, boom, it has a vector direction, right? You're giving it something to move towards. So your propulsion is different than your breaking of gravity itself. The two separate systems in there, not one. And anytime that you can get in there and create two resonant frequencies, so one set that's in resonance, one set that's in resonance, so you got two sets going on, they have a beat frequency together. That's always in a UFO. It's in every via mono. That's why the tube sizes are different. Two are shorter than the other two that are going on. They create a beat frequency in between them as you turn them on. For those of you who don't understand that experiment, basically you take a crystal cylinder, you go take a piece from your toaster, that metal that's in there, you heat it up. You put it at a certain height inside that cylinder, and it'll create resonance inside your cylinder. Do another one the exact same way right next to it, but at a different height. It'll create a different resonance frequency. Between the two, they create a beat frequency between them. That's how the via mono works. So you knew that they were creating resonance in order to break gravity. It has nothing to do with the propulsion system because it's basically a fan. So, yeah, I mean, you can see it right on the via mono. They use a basic fan or a wind blade, whatever you want to call it. I just call it a fan. Anyway, that resonance which breaks it. Now, what you're going to get into is because if you break your hold to the earth, right? Now you have to deal with the centrifugal force of the earth itself. It's going to want to throw you out. It's going to say, get the heck out of the club, buddy. You don't belong here no more. So you're going to start to have other things like that if you create a bubble. That's why you would say, oh, man, it's buoyancy. Because now you are light like a bubble inside of water. Though it's air that you're going through. It's just a different viscosity. So now it becomes buoyant. So now you can move within that. So a lot of these things that they attribute to faster than what you could see basically has to do with the time dilation field in your UFO. If you can start to create time dilation, you can move anywhere you want at the speed that you want. There is a way to break the time dilation field from affecting you. And it has to do with how you built the actual shell of your craft. How many out there have seen aluminum, bismuth, aluminum and wonder why? Well, you're creating lead. It's not exactly bismuth, is it? Bismuth is a crystallized form of it, but when you put it in compression, it becomes lead. Well, you want to break? There you go. It cannot go through that time dilation, cannot go through that lead that fast. It just can't. It's basically in a radiation field. So radiation, we all know the reaction between lead and radiation. Well, that's how you break it. Bismuth, aluminum, bismuth. Bismuth becomes lead when you compress it in between two layers of aluminum. It also has a high reactance value when you do that. So when you pull in energy to it, it acts as a capacitor, and it'll give you an immediate spike of energy through it. You can use all of those things. So, yeah, all of it's in there, man. It's all pretty much in the patents. You just have to read through them and see which ones are important. And then what would be even better is if you could take the common words that I can use and put them into a physics term and, you know, put the physics with it, then you'd have something spectacular. But I don't do that portion. I just deal in the mechanics of things and how they work coherently together. So, wow. A lot of stuff going on in the chat. Hopefully Burnye comes back soon. Yeah. Microwaves. You guys ever I saw this comment on Skinwalker Ranch. Anytime that you have, say, a cavern, you can create resonance in that cavern because the frequency goes in consistent forms when it comes from the earth. So let's think about that. If you ever seen a little bell that's above a cavern and you see it in the old pictures for ancient societies and how they did things, it's because that cavern itself has a resonance frequency to it. As soon as it has that, that little bell will go off on the top. You could tell when earthquakes are going to come if it's set to that. You can tell a lot of things that are going on in the earth based on that. Now, how would you know that? Well, if you were a civilization that lives on the surface of the earth and you had to tunnel into the earth and live in there for a while because the conditions sucked outside, but guess what? You're going to learn all that really fast, wouldn't you? We've seen that all over the place, man. There's ancient civilizations built right under the ground, right under the ground. So how would they know about melting stone? How would they know about resonance inside of cavities? Well, that's why. That's how they know it, because they had to live under there for a time and they used to bring down their knowledge. And it's insane to know that, but that's what they did. So they also knew about water. How do you take water and radiation and mix them and get something non-lethal? Well, it depends on the amount of radiation you have. If you get into a radiant form and you have compression in it, guess what? Now you're going to put it into the water table. It's going to become constructive instead of deconstructive. Now it's going to give you things that work well for you. It'll create protein spikes in different different plants. So when you sit there and you see your plants and you see a different spike come up in there that was in the old time stuff and that isn't there now, well, that's the reason why. Because they're changing the water itself in order to give that to you. They're now deconstructing the water. You're going to construct the water in a form when you put hot electricity into it. When you put a cold form of electricity into it, you're going to deconstruct it. What does it do? It opens up the pathways and stuff. So when you create constructed water, it's basically creating like a vein that goes through the water. And you're able to work within that, and it'll have a lattice structure to it, right? Well, what does the other side do? Well, it deconstructs it, so it opens it up. So now your plant's getting triple to quadruple the flow of energy with a resonance to it. Anytime you have magnetics that go to your plant as well, it makes it grow faster. Simple experiment. Go over and take yourself a magnet that came off of a microwave, right? Go put it in the ground, put a seed in it, and go put it in your garden. Put another seed right next to it in the garden. Watch them both grow. The one in the magnetic field will grow 4 times as fast as the other one. So when you get that magnetic component going on in your water that's deconstructing the water, now you can see why energy flow goes faster. Everything moves faster. Now, when I create the energy in there, I can make it move the field and create way more field that comes out of it. And that simple factor, it has less resistance to it. Now you take that same thing. I want to put the water, I want to put it with dirt, and I want to make mud, right? I put that same field into the mud. What happens? At 3 feet away, I'm still lighting up light bulbs. Why? Because that field goes right to the mud, and it's taking the mineral value that's in that dirt, and it's amplifying the mineral value and the water value, and boom, exploding it. So many strange occurrences go on with electricity if you know how to change between fields. What I've learned is I can go from a radiant field that's mostly radiant with very little static and very little magnetic value over to a high magnetic field as soon as I flip it. And now I can get a really high magnetic field. I get a very low static field, and I get a really low radiant field. Then I can go to almost a pure static field. All 3 I can hit just by changing what I'm doing, and it'll manipulate the energy into different states. Now we can understand the earth. It does the same thing. Magnetic at the core, voltage at the top. You know what I mean? Right there in your atmosphere, you got a very high voltage in there. We use it to create chronomotors and get the electricity to run them. Now we can start to see how Tesla's tower worked. We all pretty much know this if you watch my channel. It wasn't transmitting energy, it was bringing energy into it. It was taking the atmospheric energy and bringing it into the Tesla coil, bringing it down. Where is it going? Into the water table. You're basically taking the energy from the sky and bringing it down to the water table. What does that do? It makes all the energy in the water excited. Now, anywhere that water flows, I can walk over the top of the earth and put a light bulb to it and it'll light up. That's how Tesla did it. That's how he made that experiment work. He basically put all the energy, you know what I mean? That's the value that's in the sky. He brought it right down to the water table. Now, you can pull energy out of it. You basically need capacitors. And you can have a capacitor that sparks over when it has too much energy, and then capacitance when it doesn't. And you can adjust your adjustable capacitors that you put in there, but just like this, in order to get more or less out of it when you want it. That's fairly simple. That's exactly how that Wardenclyffe Tower works. You pull energy right out of the atmosphere. He wasn't trying to transmit energy to weather balloons or planes or boats or whatever crazy stuff they want to tell you. No, he used it just like we did the pyramids way back in the day. Pull the energy out of the sky, bring it into the water table. How would you know that they were doing this? Take the Blue Lotus in Egypt. There is a different energy spike in the Blue Lotus back in the day versus now. Where does that come from? That comes from taking that energy in the radiant form and putting it into the water table. As soon as you do that, that Blue Lotus has a different energy, not energy, it has a different spike of protein in it. That's the difference. As soon as you know the circle of life of what's going on and everything, you start to understand this. They literally had a different flower then. So the properties of it changed, what it was actually doing. We only know the properties based on what it is now. But now that we know how to create this stuff, now we can put the protein spike back in it and test it in the lab and really get an answer onto what they were looking at. You know, some people say that some of these flowers and stuff extended life. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you had the protein spike in there that gave you that instead of not having it and be lost? I think it's worthwhile to find out. So, yeah, crazy stuff that goes on, man. I love every bit of it, man. Anti-gravity, man. We're not ion wind. For those that think it's ion wind, we're not a chance. You need ionization. You do not need ion wind. Ion wind is in a thruster like you see on the plasma channel. It's 2.4 meters per second, which means it's basically a PC fan speed, which is very slow, and it's not good. The problem is, in order to get more ion wind to push through there, you have to keep adding more thruster material, right? So the weight of the thruster is way too high versus the amount of flow going through it. See, for every time you add one, you may pick up 1/4 of the amount of flow, but you have quadrupled or more the amount of weight to it. You'll never get it to equalize right. That's the problem. And if you say, oh man, I got this airplane that we saw that they did and it moves on ion wind. Oh man, how much does it weigh? That's a critical answer there. How much does it weigh? You can create a lifter and it'll lift off the ground on ion wind, but if it weighs too much, it won't go anywhere. So that's a simple fact. You just have to do the math and you'll find that out. Ion wind is not what you want. Not ever. You want ionization. You want to be able to break molecules apart. So, yeah. Not too good on ion wind, man. But there is a state of static that you should know. And some people know it and a lot of people don't. You can actually get it to lift on a higher form of electricity if you can take the bottom portion of that lifter, right? And you can put a flat piece of foil on it, just right over the top. You don't need the hole in there for nothing, okay? You don't need the sides. You just put a flat piece of foil on it. You get that to lift, you're doing a whole different process, but it's still with the same driver. It's still with that static driver that you're getting. So what's going on? Well, as it presses the field down, it has a small one at the top and a big one at the bottom. As you press that small field down, they cancel out to the field right below it. Well, what happens to the rest of it that's not in that field? The rest of it now pushes up. It always tries to chase the little guy. Okay? That's a flip in the field when you get to static electricity. Not a lot of people research that, but it's an absolute fact. That's why some lifters are heavier than others and can carry weight, and ion lifters can't. It's an understanding of what you're actually building there. So, man, Burnye's taking a while, man. And like he went to go buy a new computer at the store or something.
Sorry, I'm trying to reload a few patents before I join with the other computers. So,
see what we got going on here, man. Yeah, get AI for the math. I stay away from AI, guys. They offered me money to train AI on how to do this stuff, and I declined. I have no interest in letting them know what I'm doing behind the scenes or anything else, or take over anything that can be patented or anything like that. Though I will tell you, I will never patent anything. That's not my thing. If somebody needs help in understanding something, I generally try to help them, but I don't patent stuff, man. I let everybody have it so that you guys can go out and do all your experiments. Let's talk about a little bit of over unity. If you ever look up a patent on over unity, look for a resistor. You're not going to find one. What are you going to find? A lot of coils. It's like, well, why is that? A resistor creates heat. They tell you that it's a voltage differential in order to get their circuit to work in a PNP, that you need that voltage differential. What they're actually not telling you is in a DC system, what you're going to need is you're going to need to lower the voltage, up the amperage, produce a bit of heat in the resistor in order for it to trigger that transistor. That's what's actually going on there. You're not just putting resistance on it. There's more to that process than what you think there is. So how do we trick it? We use coils. We also use bulbs. Think of it. You got a neon bulb. How am I tricking that system? Well, I'm using up the energy and a little bit of heat, but I'm not putting the heat back into the system. You jump that bulb over your collector and emitter, and what it does is it allows the heat to come out of it without being able to transfer that in your system. Interesting, isn't it? You don't need a resistor. A lot of electrical engineers will say no, but when it's sitting right in front of you, man, you can't get around the fact it's there. You use coils because now as you create resonance from one coil to the next coil, you're creating energy inside the second coil. Now, if you can create a mirrored effect, which is a beautiful thing, which is showing the energy going in here and then returning to the source, so it's not losing anything, but the mirror itself effect has the other coil that's in the same resonance to it. Now, the second part of the coil goes off and runs everything that you want, while the first one goes return to sender. Is that cool or what? I mean, there's a lot of tricks to coils that people really don't understand. I can turn on a Tesla coil, put a coil right next to it, and produce plasma out of it. I can take a Tesla coil, move it another one across the room, and turn it on, all by the exact frequency that I use. So it really does matter what you're doing in these things. You want an over unity experiment, look at the process again. If you want the radiant field understanding of it, Edwin Gray. That is the patent you need to look into and research. Why? Because Edwin Gray uses the radiant field and conversion of that radiant field in order to put it into a magnetic field and then put it through a spark gap and give you mostly amperage going into that field. He is converting what would be an electrical field that goes into the capacitors into a pure magnetic field, allowing it to push that motor beyond any capability. It'll go real fast, okay? But that's how you know how to field flip. Then you see the other experiment he did, which is basically the same thing as a coil and the little ring of aluminum and get it to shoot off, right? Well, how can you do that real quick if there feels like there's no energy there and then immediately there's energy there? Well, if you know how to field flip, you can put it in a radiant state, which is energy all over it. Light bulbs will light up and everything. But that piece of aluminum won't move because there's no magnetic value to it. Now take a high voltage coil over there and turn it on inside of it. Guess what happens? It completely converts the field over to a magnetic field and it'll blast that thing across the room. Thing will be like a railgun by the time you're done. You can immediately convert fields like that and create tremendous amounts of pressure. So when we get to an EM drive, guess what? If you understand that, now we can start creating some pressure. We can start to get that thing to move because we created pressure inside the system because we knew how to convert energy. It's pretty interesting, man, all the different factors that goes into this stuff and how you do things. But it's all commonplace in everything that we do. Burnye, you came back.
Am I back? It's crazy. My other computer literally crashed right before.
Maybe it's me. Hold on.
Oh,
there we go. You there?
Oh, los momentos.
Got it.
There we go.
Nice.
There we go. You hear me now? Yeah, weird. Other computer crashes just as I'm coming into this one. That's why I use two, just in case. And
well, your picture's all cleaned up.
There we go. Okay, maybe it's gonna work now. So right, and you have the center piece, right, and then you have the coil, the Tesla or Uden coil here, right, and then you have a bunch more going this way, and then a bunch more going this way, and then a ring going through all of the outer ones. Oops. Oh. And that this is a patent for electrical driven flying saucer based on magnetic suspension is how they call this.
So you're suspending the magnetic field in there in order to get a different field, right?
Yeah, I believe so. And so you got this one that these are connected. So you have an inner one of two and an outer of two. And then the solid down the middle, I believe.
So you know for a fact that it's a Tesla coil in the center, so between those two rings that we see?
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong on this one. The past ones all are. Oops. Oh. This is very interesting. Horizontal motion, so level flight for a disc-shaped craft. Transmitters, synthesized Doppler redshift wave, pump beam, synthesized Doppler blue shift wave. See, always the red and the blue waves. Right? Why is that? Why do you have to have the blue and the red radiation splitting? I wonder if that has anything to do with what I've been rambling on about.
Well, hold on. Go back to the patent real quick.
Yes.
So if it's a Tesla coil in the center, the reason
yes. Here, I guess I should give this a little abstract. A magnetic suspension electric rotor flying saucer comprises a saucer shell, a saucer cabin, a rotor system, and a control system. The control wing system is a magnetic suspension electric rotor wing system composed of a magnetic suspension rotor wing wheel, an electrodynamic ring, a magnetic suspension shaft, and magnetic suspension led rails. The electrodynamic ring, the magnetic suspension shaft, and the magnetic suspension led rails are fixed on the saucer shell. The magnetic suspension rotor wing wheel is suspended in space, limited by the electrodynamic ring. The magnetic suspension shaft and the magnetic suspension led rails and rotate around the magnetic suspension shaft by the electromagnetic thrust.
So basically, they're creating a bearing. is what it's saying, right? You create a
Lead,
bearing.
sorry, lead, not lead. That's my Alchemist stoner bat. I was wondering, like, when I read that the first time, yes, thank you, lead. Yeah,
It sounds like
the lead shaft, not the lead shaft.
Yeah. It sounds like a magnetic bearing is what they created in order to do this, so that they can rotate it with such a large diameter, is what it sounds like. And then they have different fields going on. They look like vector directions when you come over to those cones that are inside there. I do not think that they're active all the time. If they put the Tesla coil in the center, it's because it has longitudinal waves in it, is what they're looking to get out of it. They're looking for that form right there. And then they need the non magnetic suspension. They need that component on the outside there.
And this was originally, so here's the inventors, Yao Gang Ruan and Zhu Yang Hu from Beijing University of Technology, and originally filed in January 21st of 2010, published February 11th, 2011. But see, this is November 10th, 2011, because this is the United States patent, where this is the Chinese patent. And so it was first filed in China by the Chinese. Then they decided to come over and also patent it in the US. And that, right, if it's published, that means that it is a working model, right? It's yeah, so here's the number of this patent, and I should probably pull up the entire thing for the next episode, but I'll have to do it ahead of time so it doesn't freeze.
Just so we understand, Burnye, yes, in a patent it has to work, but it doesn't have to match the name and how it works. It's all in the description of how the patent's written. So if they're just trying to tell you about fields inside of a saucer,
Correct.
that's what they're doing. And then that part has to work. It doesn't have to be a UFO, not at all. That's not what they're trying to say. So it matters the language that's in the patent. If the language is basically telling you how to create different fields, that's all it has to do. And then it verifies the patent state, but the whole, you know what I mean, title of it can be misleading all day long.
Absolutely. Fully agree with that. And
that's how people got away with patenting the that little Geo Metro. Did you ever see that, the electric car that they patented that was basically over Unity? The only reason his patent went through,
I don't know if I have. I would like to see that.
Oh yeah, the only reason his patent went through was because he described the system and how it worked, and it exactly worked that way without using the word over Unity, without using the word free energy. He just described very specific details about the working of it. That was it. That's how they get around the patent process, to show you exactly what these things are.
Exactly. And inventors like Tesla and others, and Walter Russell's patents, that's one we're going to have to dig into as well, because there's insane transmutation that he's got in those. And not a lot of people have looked into them. Okay, let's see if it will let me bring up the other ones.
Well, didn't Bedini do transmutation on a video?
Oh yeah, a few times. And I'm glad you brought up Bandini, because that was literally the next name I was going to say after Tesla, about misleading patents that have a whole lot more. And oh no, this is a different one. My apologies. What is this? For flying disc. Vertical take off. Horizontal. No. I think that, no, these are rotors still. So this is anything in the 80s is usually still a VTOL. That's not the one I was looking for. Oh, this one, I think. Here we go. I think this was the one. So I think this, yeah, here we go. So this one, June 17th, 2014. So the next one, and sure enough, it is electrical driven flying saucer based on magnetic suspension. And again, it is Xiao Gang Ruan and Zhu Heng Hao. And it is the second American patent that they did. Here's more aspects. Oh yeah, so look, that's how those cores and coils are from this cross section of it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a Tesla coil in there at all.
Yeah. You're actually right on that. Oh, and yes, the patent number for this one. I think the first one was it
looks more like a magnetic bearing, to be honest with you.
Is this one the same, or is this a different one? No. Oh, this one, John Quincy St. Clair's. Yeah, that's another interesting one that in 2002. And rotating electrostatic propulsion system. Motor-driven, electrostatically charged cylinder rotating within an electrostatically charged annular ring for the purpose of creating a space-time curvature, stress, energy, tension in the horizontal direction. The thrusters are augmented by magnetic vortex generators, either embedded in the cylinders or located above each thruster, for the purpose of increasing the permittivity of space by permeating each thruster with low-density hyperspace energy generated by a wormhole created between our space and hyperspace. A combination of 3 thrusters mounted on the underside of the hull of the spacecraft provide thrust and yaw motion control. Interesting. Indeed.
Is there another page to this patent?
There's like probably 30 pages to each of these patents. So this is why I've been pulling up the patents, because numbers here and pausing them, because I'm going to go back in and then probably pre-record an episode, maybe instead of doing it live, with the full all of these patents pulled up, and we'll go into it in detail.
Cool, because I want to read through that and see what they say. Because there's a lot of people on the last one were saying it didn't say that there was a Tesla coil at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly. I don't think there was.
You have to read through them.
Exactly. This is another very interesting synthesized Lorentz Doppler and high frequency pump beam, low frequency pump beam, source frequency emitter, and the red and blue Doppler. Remember from the earlier patent, and again, look at what we have, right? It's very all ties in to how you're
starting to get there.
Exactly, and that each why it's all on these discs is because that's what they originally recovered, and that they had to first learn how to stabilize it with like a inner spinning propeller, and then you turn it into a turbine, and then you turn it into so much, like there's all the different physics, aeronautics, and what's the right word? I'm looking for the um,
So basically, once they realized they weren't dealing with some kind of thing with air pressure,
yeah,
instead they were
well,
dealing with an electrical field, they were able to go from rotating something manually to just basically the wire layout and getting a direction of the energy.
yeah, exactly. Well, and like they're like, how do we stabilize? How do we use this discraft on our like world, like on our plane, right, in our atmosphere? How do we stabilize it? How do we get it going forward? And then, oh, how do we do it while it's spinning? Oh, how do we like balance it in all the different ways? And then they're like, oh, but then we have to get it above our atmosphere, above our, well, into actual plasmatic vacuum space. And then oh, it's in this different buoyancy density charge field. And then when you have it rotating and doing all of its different conjugating wave functions and collapses and charges, then all of a sudden it's a different story.
Okay, so check it out. This is why geometricals work in some of this stuff instead of using rotating discs. Rotating discs suck. Okay, they just suck. Too many variables going on. But when you get to a energy field, all you needed to do is rotate. So if you can get that energy field to rotate while creating compression, while creating a static field based on the amount of friction it has in between the two fields, guess what? Now you have a giant capacitor that works out. You don't need propulsion. Not like that. This is looks like somebody shoved a rocket up its you know what.
Exactly what it is. This is the original Honeyboo, right? So it's like they had them, but it was just rockets, and then a little bit of the T Townsend Brown effect, right? The cathode anode aspect of the charge and the ionization and breakdown, right, of the combustion and the flow. But uh, it wasn't fully working systems because it was only rocket propelled, but like that's why it was a first generation sort of thing. It did exist, but did it work good? No, not
So
really, probably, right?
they okay, so what it basically tells you is they had to be in some sort of high level in the earth, right? In the sky in order to pull that energy to make this thing work. So what it tells you is they understood it worked there, but they couldn't make it work on the ground. So they couldn't put it off of the ground, right? Because they didn't understand which energy state they were in. They had to get it in the sky to find that energy state. Now they can start working their formula backwards back to the ground. They had no idea.
Exactly. Right. And like, so Victor Schauberger's aspect was another part that they were trying to understand, and it's what led to the turbine engines, but his were even more advanced and really need to be put into vectoring programs and ACAD and stuff, and the efficiencies of the modern turbine propeller systems will
What?
exponentially
Hold on. I
increase.
think you're totally. This is totally different than a turbine.
Or sorry, yeah. Well, it's part of it, and then there's another count.
This
Oh,
is
that's a whole.
on. Hold on. This is Schauberger is working on the principle of the air itself having energy in it, and then now he's trying to vortex the energy.
Yeah.
That's yeah, that's what he's
So
working
it
on.
ties into the wind hex of what the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project does, as well as Walter Russell's, and just the vortex spinning. It's the entro entropy motion of self-organization of just matter and space-time. Essentially, the flow of the ether, I guess, would be a good way to think of it. And um, yeah, I'm
He was he was basically attempting to make a tornado and ride the center of the tornado through, is what he was thinking. It was never propulsion. It was I don't know if you want to call it impulsion or whatever. It was pulling the craft through the
implosion,
hole.
exactly. And
Yeah.
you have to have implosion on one side and explosion on the other in the reaction and the breakdown and reconstruction of the ionization, right, of the space-time.
Well, he was using the ionization in the air in order to structure that tornado around it. He was creating an energy state inside,
Exactly.
so it would go sideways instead of going up and down. So now he's creating it, so now he could do it and pull himself through, which means he's going to move at 5 to 10 times the speed without having any inertia in it, because the eye of the storm is calm. All the energy is on the outside of it, so it basically shoots him through without destroying his craft. It was a completely different understanding of energy in the sky.
Exactly. And here is this Chinese patent in Chinese. And oh, look at this. It was originally filed in 2006 in China, but then published, accepted in 2011. I find it fascinating how they keep developing it and they're obsessed with it, right? And OdySee cars, and that's interesting.
Yeah, it looks familiar. I've worked on that a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Never seen this before? Never experimented with this before? So look at how the...
Oh, by the way, real quick, can you go back to that? I just want to tell people something that they probably don't understand. They love to tell me about magnets, right? So the magnets in that only go to one direction. They only go to the center plate. They do not create a magnetic field around it because it has a metal shell that goes onto it. So it only allows it to go in one direction. The better part of it is the high voltage that goes into it. You're looking at a DC flyback. The core of the DC flyback is the center spiral that goes up in it. So it's basically creating a magnetic field around that piece of soft iron that goes in there, or I forget what they call it, ferrite, in the ferrite core, right? But that's your negative. But then the positive is high voltage. So it basically transforms the field going out positive, right? So on the top of this thing, you literally have a static value. On the bottom, you literally have a magnetic value. So what's the difference? So if I took this and understood it in geometry and put it 360 degrees, it's the same thing as the Earth is doing. I have a magnetic center and I have a high voltage outside, right? I'm creating the same thing that's going on there. So if you could see it in 3 dimensions as a sphere, it tells you the same thing that the Earth is doing itself. It's mimicking it. The energy putting into it amplifies both sides. So now the bottom is basically magnetic. People still think it's high voltage, you know what I mean? Throwing off energy like it's static. It's not. Only the top one does it. So it's completely different than people think it is. And you have to create the resonance between the top disc and bottom disc. That's why there's no magnets on the top disc, by the way, because it has to be a static form. You have to create resonance between the top disc and bottom disc, but because the bottom disc has magnets on it, it's centrifugal force, so you're going to get a different RPM. You have to create it in 1/2 wave as the top in order to put it in resonance. And then as soon as you do, that's your one resonance field. Your Tesla coil is your second resonance field. As they come together, you have your beat frequency.
That is well said, well explained, and we are 1 minute away from the 2-hour mark. So on that note, this was pretty awesome. It was all over the map, but in theories of everything, it has to be, and it's perfect for Woo Woo Wednesday. And I need to take a nap to be up later to do Woo Woo episode number 3 of the day with alien carvings and the U parts out of Mexico and how it all ties in, because they all depict the winged gods, the elongated skulls, and the disc craft. And until then,
you crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just Burnye.
Burnye just like last week, huh?